Give you a minute for some people to come in, and then we're going to get started. We're going to talk about these outer planets coming out of retrograde. Oh, but first a little jam. How you guys doing today? It's Tuesday. It's a Mars day. Hopefully you're out there making moves. Good morning. Good afternoon, baby, where you're at. Hello, hello, hello. This is a beautiful day, and I'm excited to talk about these outer planets with you. So, how you doing? How you doing? Good morning. Yes, good morning. I see some of you coming in. Hello. Let's get ready. Let's get ready to talk. Hola, 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 hola. ¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo están? Hola, hola, hola. 안녕하세요. 안녕하십니까? We've got older visitors as well. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here with you today and to talk about these outer planets coming out of retrograde. And really, you guys, around these parts, around Stormie Grace channel, we're going to get ready for October a little bit early because we're going to also be coming into the window of where eclipse season actually starts. So I'll be talking about that just a little bit today too, but getting us ready. The eclipse season starts, which we're going to have our next eclipse showing up in November, and it's going to switch energy, be in the energy of Taurus. So the eclipse season actually starts about 4 or 5 weeks before the eclipse actually happens. So we're going to be getting ready. You're going to see that the October videos, as well as coming along the 2022 videos, are going to be coming along really early. So if you don't like early videos, if that's not your jam, that's okay. You just stick with September. You know, watch, put your head where your hands are and be focused right here. That's a beautiful thing to do. But I do want us to have the information and the time to get, to get prepared for what's coming in October. Okay, so we'll be getting ready for that. But October also brings back to back our outer planets out of retrograde. So that is good news for us. It's exciting. It's exciting news for us, right? Because we can have finally these things, these shifts, these changes we've been experiencing, we've been trying to push them forward and get them out into the world. We'll be able to take and make some traction with them. So hello. So it'll be exciting to have this happening. But I want to also point out, and I want to say it right now in the beginning, in case you have to click out, you got to go to work, you're just over it, whatever. October, everything comes out and it's like boom, 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 boom. We have Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and then right behind that we'll have Mercury on the same day as Jupiter, as a matter of fact. As they come out of retrograde, it's great, but they need a little bit of time. They need a couple weeks to pick up their speed. So as these come out of retrograde, when they will be the strongest for us to actually make the moves, where you're not going to hear me saying, wait anymore, is going to be in November. So October, I want you to get notes made right now. Get your pen, get your paper, grab your calendar, and be ready for October to be prep time. October is prep time. And that is something that I want to be really firm and really clear about, because that's where the energies are going to point. But when planets do come out of retrograde, even these outer planets, we get a little bit of a sense of relief. We do get a sense of movement going on. So these projects, these ideas that you've been taking on, we will be able to start to feel the energy letting up a little bit around them. And globally, these are outer planets, so they are societal planets. These are our global planets. We're going to see more movement happening, right? And depending on where you are in the world, you can pay a lot of attention to even what's going on with your governments in your individual spaces. And we just can't cover that in this channel or in this video, because I do practice mundane astrology, but each location, each country, each city is different. So we just can't cover that in this general video. So if that's something that you're interested in the mundane perspective, I can definitely put some links below and get you pointed in that direction. But today we're going to talk about the 3 outer planets that are coming direct as soon as we get into October. And I'm going to take us back. Don't worry. After this video, I will put some timestamps down below so that you guys can find when and where we're talking about stuff. And if you're watching and you feel like putting the timestamps when I switch, I would love you a ton for that as well. But we're going to talk about when they went into retrograde and what that was about. And we're going to talk about when they come out of retrograde. I'm also going to touch a little bit on what does it mean when you have these particular planets retrograde in your own particular chart, and what does that look like. So I think that we are here. I think we're saddled in. So again, hola, 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 annyeonghaseyo, annyeonghaseyo. We have our older people in here, and annyeong for our younger friends as well. I'm glad to have you guys here. So let's get in here and let's start talking about what is what, okay? So first and foremost, we have Pluto, who is going to come out of retrograde first, leading the charge out of retrograde as we get here into October. So October 6th, we're going to see Pluto coming out of retrograde at 24 degrees of Capricorn. Okay, so depending on where this 24 degrees of Capricorn lies in your chart, you're going to want to find that out. And if you do not have a chart, please go to Astro Cafe or astro.com, Cafe Astrology. Get a chart from me. Get your chart. Even if you don't know what everything in that says, it's important so that you see this in your own particular chart, okay? Now, Pluto in general, when we're having a Pluto retrograde time, what Pluto is really about is, first of all, it is a little planet, right? And they can't even agree if it's a planet. I think it's a planet. But it is a time where we have to go in. A retrograde pushes us in. There's a lot of reflection that comes with what this particular energy is. Pluto at 24 degrees in general is vibrating in a sense of power and position, that it's like woo, woo, you know, as opposed to when a planet gets into a sign and it's at those beginning degrees, you're starting to figure some things out. At this particular point, at 24 degrees of Capricorn, Pluto has been showing you some things. It has been lighting some things up in this Capricorn area for you, and it has literally said, we need to have a phoenixing in this area or it will be hard. And I don't think that Pluto makes any bones about that. And that is not scary. It is simply our indicator that it is time to grow, right? You grow or you go. That is the business of Pluto. It is about where we need to reflect on where I feel out of control in my life, where I feel like I need to release the reins and let something go or change the way that I'm doing something, because there's so much energy of transformation and Phoenix available in this Plutonian energy. When we're in a retrograde, that's exactly what we're doing, is we're getting right back in there. And we are reviewing where I need to grow or I need to go. Now, some real live examples of this, right? If you are looking at these Plutonian areas of your life and it happens to be, let's say, in your second house, in the house of finances, okay? There's maybe a call for you, depending on your particular chart, to relook at how you're doing your finances, how you're interacting with your finances. That's right, adapt or die, right? Like it is, how are you going to do your finances? And we have seen as astrologers plenty of cases of people, places, and things. Many of us have had the experience in our own lives because we didn't know what we were doing exactly, where there was no grow and that area had to go. And typically as that area goes, it can feel really challenging. Now, again, I am not speaking fear-based astrology, right? This is just life. This is just life. We have to grow or we have to go. So this is where we look at, I think, this dynamic within each of us during a Pluto retrograde, which is like, how much am I willing to power struggle with the universe, right? If something is trying to be changed in my life for good or for ill, it's all about my perception if it's good or it's ill. And I am still in here in the power struggle. You know, how much more of that power struggle do I have in me? Because I'm not going to say uncle. I'm not going to play Pluto surrender until I'm tired, until I'm out of ideas, until there's nothing else for me, right? That is the brilliance of the human condition. We can hold on. So I think some of maturing in humanity is getting tired faster to not have to power struggle with the universe so much, so that we can get in and go with that flow, because Pluto is not the one, right? Pluto is not the planet to power struggle with, because Pluto will win every time. Pluto will win every time. So this is where we grow or we go. So let's say this is in your relationships. If people have been in your life, they've been controlling, they've been manipulative, Pluto is going to make it clear that it is time to let that thing go. And usually the way that it makes it clear is, I've never actually had Pluto put up like a billboard for me to be like, Stormie, let this situation go. But what happens is my insides get tight. I'm getting up in the morning and I'm tired even thinking about that situation, right? Or I feel like I'm not free to move. I feel like I haven't transformed in this particular area. with. So usually we're going to get this internal sense, and in a very external way, because these are outer planets, sometimes an external situation will present itself and I feel like I'm power struggling, and this is the area that is available for a turnaround, because if not, then we get to experience the experience of not adapting. Right now, I want to say too, whether you're just getting it together and living perfectly by every planet, or you're struggling through some seasons, I very much so believe that I believe that everybody is right where they're supposed to be learning their lessons, right? You're just not going to F this thing up, right? You may not like the outcomes of some things that you do, or you like the outcomes more when you do different things, but I just believe everybody is exactly where they need to be to learn the lessons about getting back home to that connected flow of the universe. So whatever your experience is this time, give yourself a little bit of grace. You are learning. If you cannot adapt at this time, if you cannot make changes, if from the inside out you cannot work at this detox and this withdrawal that Pluto is bringing to your table, you're phoenixing, it's because you're still learning. Come off of yourself a little bit. Do not beat yourself up, and certainly do not surround yourself, if you are still growing, with people who will beat you up, right? You need to be surrounded with some people who've already mastered that skill and that lesson. So I just like to point that out, because, you know, my channel is called Stormie Grace for a reason. Grace is the slack the universe cuts us for being assholes. That's what I was taught, and I'm learning a lot of the time, and I will miss a line, and I will judge myself and put myself in positions of doubt that the universe does not have my back. I can't do this, you know, all of the things. And that is really just me power struggling Pluto with the universe. So during this Pluto retrograde, that's something you know, have permission right here to let some of that go and apply a different skill. Okay, now the other thing is that if you have been being really controlling of other people, places, and things in your life, like, you know, you've had the death grip on this relationship, you've had the death grip on these children, you've had the death grip on this business, on these friends, on this fear, on this alcoholism, on this whatever, this is also a phenomenal opportunity during this Pluto retrograde, where Pluto will have given you a theme and shown you your pattern that needs to be transformed. Okay, so in this way, I like to celebrate the Pluto retrograde, because if we've had destructive behaviors, no matter how subtle they are, from my mini thinking down to my actual actions in life, you know, the more extreme my change that is needed is, the more extreme my change that is needed will feel, right? Secrets have come out during Pluto retrograde, all sorts of things that live in the depths of kind of that 8th house energy: sex, porn addictions, alcohol addictions. When we get into some of the lower things that live in the 8th house, those things come out: traumas, dramas, ancestral patterns of trauma come out as well. But I also think that ancestral patterns of genuine healing come back to the table during a Pluto retrograde as well. So it's almost like during this time, I hope that you've taken a chance to focus on that and feel that in the world, and the space around you, right? Because as Pluto is retrograde in this big old world out here, what we can see are secrets coming to the table. We can see that ties that can no longer bind in terms of countries or in terms of economies, these things will change. It's Capricorn energy. So in terms of business, what does not help me achieve forward, what does not help me climb that big old mountain like that sea goat, mountain goat, is going to need to phoenix and change. So I want to just take like a couple seconds to talk about what the energy was at that time, and then talk about it coming out. Now let's back our minds and our energies and our, you know, evaluation for the morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, back to April 27th, because this is when Pluto stationed retrograde, was Tuesday, April 27th at 26 degrees of Capricorn. So you see, Pluto moves so slow, it didn't even need to move back really far for us to start getting some messages about some things need to change, baby, okay? So as we were looking at this particular day and having this experience, what we would have seen, and if you haven't had a chance to look back at the April videos to see about that Pluto retrograde talk, please take a take a gander, take a gander back at that. Because one of the things that we would have seen at that particular time is that as Pluto was taking this, this retrograde, it was actually sitting in really, really interesting, let me say that, interesting connection with Jupiter, who was not retrograde at the time. So it is this big expansion of energy meets something that's flipping around. Jupiter here is going to, what is going to happen here is that Jupiter in this particular case was going to activate this like expansion of, I need to change to grow here. I need to, quite fortunate, because Jupiter is still our benefic energy, I need to realize the fortune of my life in order to expand and change. I need to surrender some areas of my life that are making me feel like I'm not proceeding forward. Maybe I've had this sense of like, even the things that I felt like were repulsive or I've been intolerant around, Jupiter would have called some benefic energy, especially things about society, If it was like, nope, if you still were in the position where you're like, I don't want to learn about technology, I don't want to be a part of this grouping, oh my gosh, the division that we've seen, at least in the United States, this is a time where, I think that we're called during this retrograde to take a look at what's repelling me from this. Where am I having this control? So we have this experience of Pluto in its retrograde at this particular time, okay? And so as we come and we're seeing Pluto come out of retrograde here on the 6th, this is when this releases and Pluto looks at us and says, did you adapt? Did you adapt? Did you learn? What has changed? Where have you phoenixed in this Capricorn area of your chart that is now useful in the world, in society, in what you can do, right? Where has this brought you a change enough to actually participate in some way in your world, in your community, in your relationships? Remember, you need to look at what house and what energy this is happening in for you on your particular chart. So this is where Pluto will say, did you adapt? Or do we still have more growing to do, right? Where did some of those destructive behaviors, you got some help with that. You got some learning, you got some education, okay? So now Pluto will come out of retrograde and it takes some time for Pluto to come forward. And this is your real opportunity. Remember, the planets aren't making it happen. They're just providing an energetic space, a cosmic space where we have the opportunity to respond to the energy being provided. So as Pluto's out of retrograde and it's direct, you're going to get to see. You will watch, and the way that you watch and you see and you understand is by living your life. Go out of your house, be in your house, and live your life. And see if your patterns are different. If your patterns are not different, they will simply not be different. And this is where you don't get down on yourself. You say, clearly I am still growing. And I do want to I want to throw this little thought out here, because this keeps coming to me as I was especially looking at the Saturn direct. We'll talk about that in just a second. But this idea that, as we're here and we're practicing this astrology and we're trying to live and use this to grow ourselves and have a different experience, if we're not practicing spirituality in our homes, I think that we are kidding ourselves if we think we're practicing it really in the world. And that's a big gulp of water to take in, and as these very on time fated events and repeating patterns come up in our lives, if I can practice it at home, I can feel pretty sure that in the rest of the world, I have outgrown some of my destructive behaviors, some of my control issues that are going on. So this is a profound time to really take a look at that as this Pluto comes out of retrograde. So remember, put it on El Calendario, and of course I'll be putting it in the video as well, but we're aiming for October 6th, where not only do we have a new moon, but then we're going to have Pluto coming out of retrograde, and you can start to watch these different behaviors that you've got going on, okay? So brilliant, beautiful. I got to make a timestamp right there so that I make sure to note that in the section down below. But before we go, let me just say this quite quickly. When it comes to having Pluto retrograde, natally in your chart. It's not uncommon. This is one of those planets that's not uncommon. I mean, Pluto is retrograde for like 5 months out of the year. So if you were born in that 5 months, which a whole bunch of people were, you're going to have this particular placement retrograde in your chart. So it's not, I wanted to say that it's not uncommon. Don't freak out or anything like that. But what happens in my experience of people who have Pluto retrograde in their chart is typically you will usually have Saturn retrograde as well. And just depending on the time of year, you'll also have Jupiter retrograde. But if you have Pluto retrograde in your chart, this typically indicates some kind of challenge with your phoenix, right? With your ability to phoenix. You maybe phoenix from within. Maybe you understand the internal need to change, but it's your behaviors outside sometimes they're delayed, or it takes longer for that to manifest. And typically it's a control thing. The thing that I always bring people with Pluto retrograde back to is the understanding. I'm like, what are you afraid of? Why are you afraid to let this go? Why are you afraid to surrender this to the care of the universe? Why are you afraid to truly and honestly form partnership with another person? What are you afraid of? So what can happen is this has to be like a process of genuine internalizing it first, and then you're able to phoenix. And sometimes that phoenixing, when you have Pluto retrograde, doesn't happen until later in life. It doesn't mean it cannot happen. The retrograde means that it may be more delayed in terms of timing. Now, the other thing that I find with Pluto retrograde is sometimes due to, I think, that fear or that blockage, we're learning with Pluto retrograde to stand in our power. And that is a phrase that I think really gets thrown around a lot. So I want to be clear on what I mean by that. Standing in our power here in this time means to express that externally, right? To not just know that I am divinely made and I'm a whole gift in my life because this is this version that was made, and that I have a job to do here, but that I have agency and autonomy as well outside of myself. And I demonstrate that to people. And, the other thing with Pluto retrograde and standing in your power is this honest understanding that if I don't run from those deep, dark fears that I have, the real ones for me, the honesty, right? If I don't run from them, but I run at them, this is a really good way to actualize that Pluto retrograde externally. So just something to think about. So when Pluto is retrograde, for many of the people who have Pluto retrograde, you find all kinds of power outside of yourself because you're like doing things that you've been thinking about for months, right? You've had the other months of the year to be thinking about this, and now you're really in contact with the outside world. And so instead of, the rest of us get thrown in, you get thrown out, and it is like, whoa, I am actually getting to see my behavior right now. You've spent 5 months looking at your behavior outside of your body going, okay, let's try this again, or damn, that is what I call a boundary, right? Like all of these things become kind of available to you. It is an intense desire to do good work, I think, when Pluto is there, or to move. So, okay, let's move on and let's talk about the Saturn retrograde and Saturn direct, okay? So Saturn will be coming, it's going to be Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury. Okay, so Saturn is going to come out of retrograde on the 10th of October, and it is going to be coming direct at 22 degrees of Aquarius. All right, so first and foremost, the Saturn retrograde began after Pluto. So Pluto went in April, then Saturn went retrograde in May. So May 23rd. Look at your chart right around that time, 13 degrees of Aquarius, what was going on, what was happening for you. What was your experience at that time as Saturn was flipping retrograde? And so it would have had a little bit of the theme of, okay, so for me, because this is the first time that Saturn is taking its retrograde in Aquarius, it's a two-part thought for me. Now, first of all, just in general, when Saturn goes retrograde, we are going back over what's working and what's not, of course, but it is really a little bit more, to me, about responsibility. I'm literally going back over my responsibilities, right? I'm going back over if I'm working hard or hardly working. A lot of times, especially in ancient astrology, we'll assign the energy of Saturn to karma. To karma. So when Saturn goes retrograde, it's coming into Aquarius and now it's retrograde. So it's like, hold on, we need to rebalance these scales. We need to get some things back on track. You need to pay for the consequences of your actions. You also need to be rewarded for the things that you are doing well. So it can be this kind of energy for absolutely certain with this Saturn retrograde, okay? But the other thing I think about, and I think about it very practically, is go back into your chart, look at where 0 degrees of Aquarius was at, all the way to 13 degrees of Aquarius, okay? And as you are looking at that, very practically, as Saturn came into Aquarius, you can even back this up to March of 2020. What happened? What inklings of Aquarian things or things in that particular house area for you started to get lit up? And it was like, well, hold on. This isn't working. This is not working. This is not working this way. Or it piques your interest about, oh, I'm getting ready to take on responsibility in this area. Or, sometimes what happens is you didn't hear anything for years and you get a piece of mail that says, hey, you owed us this debt 7 years ago. And you become aware that you're going to be doing some cleaning up at that particular time. So whatever comes to your attention as Saturn came into Aquarius, went all the way to 13 degrees and all the way to 6 degrees, this is what you're going to clean up. I think it is brilliant to just be practical sometimes. I'm such a Taurus about what it is specifically that we're working on. So you're working on things that have happened between 13 and 6 degrees of Aquarius in your chart, right? Saturn came in, showed you, rewarded you, brought your attention to responsibility in this area, and as it retrogrades, it's going to ask, did you take care of that? It's going to give you the opportunity to clean that up, get that payment arrangement set, get into that counseling, have that conversation, get that house cleaned up so you can sell it. Whatever it needs to look like in the area of your chart, the retrograde gave you the opportunity to get sorted with what you're going to do to rebalance or to fix that particular area. Now, it is a 3-year process with Saturn in Aquarius. So you maybe don't fix it all this time. That's the other thing with retrogrades, right? They go, these outer planets, my God, they go so slow, and we are given the opportunity to get several passes, several directs and retrogrades to learn. We're here to learn. Act. So maybe you don't have everything figured out as this retrograde is happening, but you have definitely been put on game, as they say. You have been brought to your attention what needs to happen. Now, as Saturn stepped into that retrograde, it was square Uranus. So the Saturn Uranus square already, that's disruption to structures that have been. That's disruption to thinking that has already been in place. But there were also some nicer aspects that created the stamp of energy that we've been working with during this time. There was a really nice trine to the moon. So at a heart level, the changes that needed to be disrupted for us we received them, I think, quite well. Honestly, well, we had the opportunity to receive them quite well. The North Node was in Gemini. Venus was also in lovely connection with that North Node at that time, and was also in the energy of Gemini. So the thinking, right? The North Node is pulling us towards something new. What's next? Where are we going? What do I need to grow into? And Gemini, it's a curiosity. I'm curious about what's next. Information, new learning, new ideas, new thinking, new networks that needed to happen in my life, And for some people, quite practically, you finally got busy writing that book. You finally are getting prepared and in position to share your experience in a very valuable Venus way with the world. And Saturn took back and let you see that. It was like, yeah, you want to change your financial position in the world, you want to change your position in your community, you're going to need to talk. Gemini, you're going to need to communicate that in some way and get some new ideas together as to how you can meet your goals for whatever these areas are, right? And if it's, you had stuff going on in your 12th house, you got to get some new ideas about what forgiveness looks like, what your spiritual practice looks like, how you share that spiritual practice, right? What the transcendence looks like in this area. So these are all themes that could have been brought to your table, but those energies help. And with Saturn, from the lens of karma, this is a great way to rebalance. It is a great way to be shown where I need to go next in order to make this actualized and work for me. Okay. So again, with the Saturn retrograde cycle, in case you're new and you're learning, Saturn goes retrograde for like 4 months every year as well. You're never going to miss it. You're never going to miss it. Saturn is going to do Saturnian things as well. It is not a light, typically, it is not a light and easy energy. Neither is Pluto. They are heavier energies because they are transforming not just us internally, but things and energies that are on this planet. One of the first things that I have seen every single time that Saturn enters into a new sign is that the energies that can no longer travel in that Saturnian vibration of that particular sign, right here it's Aquarius, Saturn will be rid of them, right? And typically, if you watch, at least from what my research has shown, if you watch when Saturn comes into a new sign, I'm not talking about its little sneak peek into the sign like we had back in 2020. I'm talking about when Saturn comes into a new sign and is ready to stay and play ball for a few years, we will usually see mass transitions to the other side, mass death in some way, shape, or form. And it is really, I think, a testament to the fact that these outer planets govern a real big, powerful vibration on this planet. And if the people, places, and things, from structures to people in our own personal lives, can no longer fit the vibration, typically in Saturn's ingress or coming into the sign and that first pass in the retrograde, we'll see a lot of that happening at this time. So, for those of you out there who are growing through these Saturnian, Plutonian lessons right now, and you are experiencing the heaviness of this energy, which can feel like, loss and doubt in these other things because they challenge us. This is not the light, breezy energy of Venus. This challenges us to the core, to that place where I don't want to say that out loud, to that place where I feel like if I disconnect from this fear or this power struggle, a piece of me may die as well, right? That's the level that these planets are working at. So I'm just sending you a lot of love, whatever it is that you're growing through, from relationships to family to yourself, whatever that looks like for you, okay? Now, the other thing about Saturn retrograde is that it can feel limiting. It can feel limiting, right? Like, this is where the doubt, this is where the fear creeps in. It is, and it will likely be around a very particular set of responsibilities. Where do you have a duty? Where do you feel obligated? Is it the kids? Is it the career? Is it the money? And I feel doubtful before I get it. Once I learn to work with Saturn, right? Remember, the retrograde's giving us an opportunity to learn to work with it instead of against it. Before I get it, it feels like this is never going to be different, or this feels like obligation instead of joy, right? But once I get it and I come to the other side, it's really important to understand that Saturn is like, thank you, bravo for you, and starts to really throw the blessings that particular direction. So it's a time when I think that Saturn retrograde, I want to just tell you, give yourself the time to learn in your path. You need the time to slow down and to review and to understand how to make sure that the structures there are solid, that your lessons and your understanding and your foundation in that particular house and area are solid. Now, sometimes we'll see a chart that is just very Saturnian, so it feels like it all comes on at once, and this can just look like I pull way in. I pull way, way in, like the extreme version of isolation or the extreme version of burden or sadness can come to the table. Now, as Saturn comes out of retrograde, right, this is this is the white flag a little bit. So I want to say that. So if this is you, or you have somebody in your life who has Saturn retrograde or is experiencing the Saturn retrograde like this, I want to tell you, Saturn coming direct will relieve a little bit of that pressure, but even in it, you may be the person who's acting as the Saturnian force in someone else's life. Are you having to get in there and help somebody through it, right? Because typically Saturn, when you're learning something, is going to send you another Saturnian energy who's already gotten the lesson that you're trying to learn. And as humans, this is where we practice. We reach out, we get in there. We're like, yes, teach me, show me. But that requires a level of humility. And sometimes it requires a level of humiliation, just depending on what we need at that particular time. But this is a time where you may also be someone's Saturnian delivery. You may be someone's karma walking up to them, because that is the other thing I think we cannot take off the table, right? You may be someone's karma showing up in that helping hand. You may be someone's karma showing up as the jerk in their lives. And that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. We don't always know, right? Like, yes, the tales from the Saturn return that we could tell are amazing, because I don't want to have any illusion that Saturn is coming and we're all just responding beautifully and we're like, universe, touch my heart, let me grow. Some of us are showing up not very well. Sometimes I'm not showing up very well, right? I am as human as everybody else. Sometimes I'm not showing up very well. But the nice thing about karma and Saturn is that this understanding that everybody who works gets paid. Everybody who works gets paid. So if I'm working on my goodness is probably coming my way. If I am working on treating people dirty, if I am working on lying on my finances, if I am working on somebody else's spouse or husband, these things come around, and it doesn't make any one of us terrible. It means we're learning, right? So these are things under this Saturnian energy that by the time Saturn is direct, we will have come to some kind of understanding as to how to move forward in that differently, to have a different kind of foundation. And what I love about Saturn direct is that it will give you this opportunity to, instead of feeling limited, you move from a limited place to a focused place. Right? And this is delicious, because what does Saturn want? Saturn wants solid foundations that are so strong, so tough, that you can stand and build your achievements and your plans on it, so that you can be recognized in your field, in your house, in your life, for the work that you're doing. That's what Saturn wants. But Saturn's not going to build it on your emotions. Our emotions, like, you maybe need to learn to govern them, but our emotions are fickle. Right? Saturn is going to change you spiritually, because when I'm changed spiritually, everything in my life changes, right? So that is something to look forward to. So now, when we look at the time when Saturn went retrograde here, in May, they had that square. Then Venus was here, the North Node was here, and they were in Gemini. Relatively pleasant energy. But why I point that out to you is because as Saturn comes direct, we see a much different energy available on the table. And it's almost the reverse of what we had before, okay? So Saturn stations direct at 6 degrees of Aquarius on October 10th. So what's happening in the sky at this time is that Venus has tootled her little way around and is no longer by that North Node. Now Venus is in Sagittarius at the South Node. So that is something to pay attention to. And if you are not following Sasha Benedetti at Venus Wisdom, I need to just, let me shout this out, because Sasha follows the path of Venus, right? Through all of the houses, all of the gates. And we see here at this Saturn direct, what an important move this is, and how important Venus's role in this Saturn retrograde has been. Saturn is not squaring Uranus at this particular time, and it is still in trine, which means it is in sextile. It is in trine to the north node, which means it's in sextile to the south node. When the planets have sex, that's good for us because it creates a pocket of opportunity that we can access and take intelligent action on. We're not thinking about it. It's not just goodness that's there. We are actualizing the juice of this particular energy. And then it's right there with Venus in Sagittarius. I mean, oh my gosh, that is delicious. That is absolutely delicious because in this goodness energy to these nodes, it means where I'm destined to go next. Where I'm destined to go next, who's destined to travel with me, the job I'm supposed to have next, these things that are like the reunion of my soul with a little bit of rebalanced karma are on the table. So as Saturn comes direct here on this day, I would ask each of you to just stop. Just stop. You know, Saturn's going to come direct at 10 o'clock at night in the United States on the eastern side. Stop for a minute. Look at your life. Look at what's happened over this last 4 months. What have you learned? Where have you grown? What have you brought into your life as a result of needing to bring something new into your life to learn? What have you gone back to heal? And I want you on this day to just celebrate it for a minute. Celebrate it for a minute because what the work that you've done, the energy that's been given to you at this particular time, this is something that is a reunion. Some piece of you, your life, whether it be internal or external, has had a reunion. And maybe the reunion needs to continue to deepen. We've got another couple years with Saturn here, but there has been some reunion that has been able to happen here, especially if you've been putting in the work and in the effort, right? So, you know, just things to think about. Now, what happens if you have Saturn retrograde in your chart? Also not uncommon. I have Saturn retrograde. I have Saturn and Pluto retrograde in my chart. I'm here to just redo it all. But if you've got Saturn retrograde in your chart, typically what happens is that you have the idea is that you've had in your past life or in your current behaviors a hard time taking responsibility for certain things, for that house area and for that sign area of your life, right? So there is an immaturity that comes with this particular area, and you live it out loud. That's the most beautiful part about having Saturn retrograde, is that what you think inside is absolutely translating outside. For me, Saturn is retrograde in the energy of Libra, right? It's, oh my God, like I can just tell you some relationship stories. Look, if you struggle in relationships, for real, ask me some questions because I can share some spiritual experience with you and what it's like to come to the other side. But it's in Libra in my second house. And I will tell you, I am married today to a beautiful man that I think the universe sent us together, right? And the biggest struggle is he is ready to partnership up and share our money. And I was like, I don't understand what you're saying about share this money. Like I make my money, right? So for me, this honest understanding of partnership around not just being together and forming a true partnership and allowing my partner to grow into the man that I see and I vision in my dreams, because I was put here to help him grow, right? Not just expecting him to show up. Well, I'm like, universe, I feel like you didn't hear what I said. But the universe was like, yes, I did. You immature little something, help that man grow, right? So, but in it, I've had to grow to understand what does it mean for us to really partnership and bond our money without losing autonomy, but also creating a solid partnership. So if you have Saturn retrograde, look at the house, look at the sign that it's in for you. And likely you have lived some of those lessons right out loud, right on public. We've all seen it on the stage. And so you're growing through that. Now, other things with Saturn retrograde is typically some kind of lack of taking responsibility for others in your life in some way. And this can mean that it's just going to be delayed. You learn it down the road. Maybe you didn't really know in the last lifetime, or maybe you've struggled in this lifetime with keeping a job or having a job and actually owning your worth of achievement enough to make that next amount of money. But when you actualize and you go to your Saturn and you say, what do you need me to learn? This area gets busy changing. And I know that because I've talked about that many times on the eat and greets and things on this channel, and I can only share my lived experience with you. But as I've shared that, many of you have told me about getting together with your Saturn and watching that retrograde Saturn come to life and actualize outside of yourself in a way that it absolutely was not happening before. So you are learning some of those disciplines. So I will say this too, that along the road of the Saturn retrograde in the natal chart, sometimes this area makes you really sad, really tired. You get really defeated in this area. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was like, I don't understand why I just can't get this relationship business together, right? Like, what is it in me? And what it starts to feel like, and if you've ever been here, you know, it starts to feel like the number one question: what's wrong with me? Why not me? Why don't they choose me? Why can't I? Right? These are very Saturnian questions until we can mature in this area. And then it's like, oh, well, you know what? I'm over here thinking all of these men are freaking, I'm a victim to them. And it turns out when I get into the real inventory and look at how I was showing up, I'm an assassin. And then I don't understand why nobody stayed. I had a self-inflicted conflict that I put on me. Right? I just didn't understand how to work with Saturn to come to the other side. And lo and behold, some people came into my life and they taught me about these relationships. And, you know, and now I'm married to Josh, and God bless his soul. He's he's married to an astrologer. So, you know, he's got that going for him. Okay, so eventually with Saturn that it's retrograde, we break the patterns that we've got going on there and learn to actualize that Saturn. All right, let's get into this last outer planet because I know we've been here for a minute, and thank you for being here, by the way. So as we get to the 18th, we're going to see Jupiter and Mercury come out of retrograde. In this particular video, I'm just going to address Jupiter coming out of retrograde because it's about getting ready. Are you ready? Stop, reflect, think today. Think. Where are you at? Where are you at? We've got about a month. Okay. All right. So Jupiter went retrograde in June. So it was Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter is how they went. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. And that is how they will come out as well. So Saturn went retrograde on June 20th at 2 degrees of Pisces, had just come across into that little Pisces energy. It was like, Pisces, I'm here, but I'm not, you know? So we'll see Jupiter come out of that retrograde, at 22 degrees of Aquarius. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So it went in Pisces. So we get a little vision right there because we got a little vision of what Jupiter was going to try and bring to us as it went into Pisces. And then it gave us a little review where it was like, look, all you can handle is 2 degrees of information right now. We'll cover this at the end of the year, right? So now it comes out of retrograde at 22 degrees of Aquarius, but as Jupiter's retrograde, these things are they tap into our belief systems, right? Our belief systems. What's my philosophy about life? Where am I at in the practice of my faith? Right? Because this is faith. I feel like Jupiter, as benefic and benevolent as it is, it's like the trust fall planet. Like, oh, I trust the universe or I don't, right? And it becomes pretty blatant. So there's a lot of spiritual reflection and philosophical introspection that goes on when we're in a Jupiter retrograde. So when it also comes to, because Jupiter, I think a lot about honest education, just education, right? Wisdom. What do I do in my life that makes me content, happy, feel like I've got the greatest benefits in the world, right? Fortunate, wise. So I'm going back during a Jupiter retrograde to review these things in my life. Now, Jupiter, when it goes retrograde, because it's the biggest benefic planet, he's still giving off benefits. He's still being so damn fortunate for us that it is like, dang. But what happens is his benefits start to show up more slowly because he's retrograde, but he's still pretty, you know what I mean? I feel like Jupiter is this wise guru that you come and tell him you've messed up again. And he's like, okay, but what did you learn? As opposed to you go to Saturn and you're like, I messed up. And Saturn's like, well, there's consequences for that. You know, you've met 2 different kinds of parents essentially here. And Jupiter is just that wise, you're still learning. Let's get to the wisdom through experience kind of energy. So even as it's retrograde, there's a fair amount of fortune that is happening here at this particular time. So Jupiter goes retrograde for 4 months every year as well. You're not going to miss it. You're not going to miss it. And because we're getting so introspective about what I think, what guides my life, what do I believe in, even in education, right? Like what education do I have that has guided my life? Because, one of the things that we can see is that I was raised with a certain belief system, or I've had a certain belief system on my own for a very long time. And I'm not actually adding anything new to understanding how and what I believe. And so it can get stagnant, right? So we need to reflect. We need to reflect on, am I still growing? These are big questions out here. So where my growth, where my development is, where my applied wisdom is at, these are all things I'm going to go over during Jupiter retrograde. So in the area that I needed to grow, and this will be in the Aquarian areas for your chart, little tiny bit in Pisces, you've been thinking, okay, well, what do I need to grow here? What do I need to work on to Jupiter expand in this particular area? Where do I need to gather a bit more wisdom in this area? Right? So you're slowed down and you're looking back over this area. What's going to make this grow? What kind of fertilizer can I get in here? Right? That kind of idea. And you also, during Jupiter retrograde, more than just asking, what do I need? It's like, do I have what I need in order to make that growth process happen? Is my faith in place? Am I going to the universe and saying, look, I'm terrified. I am terrified. I hear you telling me I need to do this thing over here and I'm scared, but I am building enough faith to move my feet forward. I heard somebody say once, I just want to share this. I heard somebody say once that you can't be in faith and you can't be in fear at the same time. And I'm like, yes, you can. I move my feet faithfully in fear enough to know that that's not true. I built a whole business and I was scared to death. I was like, universe, you are telling me I'm supposed to leave my perfectly cush radio job, right? Where I'm just getting paid to talk for a living. And I am supposed to leave this, like drop it, not come back to this building anymore, to my solid paycheck, to my solid bennies with 2 kids. I got a mortgage, I'm in school, and you are telling me that I am supposed to start an astrology practice on YouTube when I have watched 1 YouTube video in my whole life? Let me assure you, friends, you can be in faith and fear at the same time, but it is during a Jupiter retrograde about, am I gathering the resources I need to walk faithfully even when fear is presenting itself? It takes courage to grow. It takes courage to grow. Now, the other thing I think is profound during a Jupiter retrograde is Jupiter asks you, and this is why I think it's an energy of faith, as well as Jupiter asks you, looks you in your eyeballs and says, okay, you've been asking for this for a long time, and baby, I want it for you. Like, I can't wait to see what you do when you get this. But are you ready? Are your resources ready? Is your faith ready? Is your mind ready? Right? Are you ready to have that romance in your life? Like, are you really ready? Are you done? Are you done being a victim of romance? Right? And you're ready to be in partnership. Are you ready to have increased wealth in your life? Like, have you put on paper, when this wealth comes to me, I'm going to let it keep growing by investment. I'm going to let it keep growing by my giving, right? Like, are you ready for it? Right? From the inside out, I think Jupiter comes and gets eye to eye with us and says, I'll give it to you. I will help you expand. I will bring this to your front door, but are you ready? So you see, when we look at the pattern of Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter all going retrograde, it's a getting ready for life process, right? Pluto, adapt or die. Get it together, right? You're going to change this area or it's going to be painful and you're going to be playing victim mode. Saturn, okay, this is where we need to take responsibility, right? Because when Pluto is retrograde, I said this in the live the other day, the woman that I was 5 years ago, she can't live this life today. She can't handle my money. She can't handle my husband. She doesn't know how to raise these teenage young women over here and help them become what they're next. And she sure the hell doesn't know how to run this business. She just doesn't. And she was wonderful, and I thank her. And I hope each of you, as these retrograde seasons end, have thanked the previous version of yourself. But we can't be them. And Jupiter makes it clear. If you're ready, I'm going to give it to you. And if you're not, we need to look at where this is actually a destructive desire that you have. You have a belief system that if I just have enough money, I can be happy. Jupiter will dig that out of you in a retrograde, but it's in a really nice way, right? It's in the grandpa guru kind of way, or that soft place that you can go to the guru and land. It's in that way, right? This idea that if I only have this person in my life, I can be okay. Jupiter, as a planet of faith, says, no, your security needs to be grounded in the heart of the universe. This is where you get your stability. This is where you get your self-esteem. This is where you get your self-confidence. This is where you get it all. Right? And once we get grounded in that space and can own our own space, then, but these ideas that I have that are destructive lines of thinking because they're delusional. They are delusional, right? Delusion. Let me break that down for a minute. Delusion is, for me, it's like, you know, they have TV and they used to have the little screen in the corner where you could be like watching the cooking show and also watching, football or whatever, right? That's delusion. The little tiny screen up here is delusion. So I'm living a life that's in the cooking channel in the kitchen, right? But delusion, my head is showing me that I'm in a football game. So I'm making decisions in the kitchen like this is a football game. So I'm knocking pots and pans over, and I think this is the right thing. And people outside of me are looking at me going, that's not what you need. But delusion is heavy. The human condition, what I get in my mind, I will run with that. So there's a lot of checks and balances in terms of faith and reality. And the way that I get to reality are teachers, are people outside of me who want well for me, right? Who can help me see past my delusion, because this is the destructive belief system that Jupiter lights up at this particular time. And then it gives us the opportunity to say it. I believed that I was not going to be valuable if I didn't have fill in the blank. Like, right? It's like, well, what's the problem? You need to say out loud, what is the problem? Not what is the solution. What is the problem right now? Because I'll bring people to you who can help you with that solution, so that when you're ready and these gifts come to your table, you are ready to roll. And they're usually Jupiterian things. They're ideas, their actions, their behaviors, their beliefs that I've had for a very long time, and they are out of whack. They are huge. They are expanded. So even with Jupiter, it's not like a tiny thing, usually it's not, right? It's something that's big. It's been dominating my life in a very big way. So these are things that come unrooted. So, what have you acknowledged in all of this retrograde time? What have you acknowledged is not useful anymore? So 4 years ago on this channel, I ended up having a surgery. And after that surgery, my hormones went absolutely crazy. And it was unexpected. Right? And it was all these things. And of course, as it happened, it all happened when the outer planets were direct, right? And during the retrograde, I got to get real honest with my spiritual teacher about what was going on. Not only were my hormones out of whack, that was an actual physical thing that was happening, but more than that, spiritually, my deepest fear, that I don't want to be my fear, right? Like, I don't want it to be true. My deepest fear that I had held on from the time I was 13 until I was, 35, was that once my hormones changed, right? If I ever went into perimenopause, if I went into menopause, something like that, if my hormones ever changed, I would have no more value on this planet. I don't want to say that out loud, because I know plenty of women who are in menopause and they are brilliant and they are powerful, and I watch them move. And to me, on the inside, That was a genuine fear because that's the best of me I knew. What I knew were my, radiant, sexual, got all my hormone years, right? And if you have not ever had your hormones be jacked up, you do not understand how much vitality actually comes with balanced hormones, right? And that you got to grow the F up and find what's next when you don't have access to that vitality. And I had to sit across from that woman and I had to Pluto. I had to grow or go because it was eating me mentally. It was destroying my marriage. It was showing up in my business in a way where I felt like I couldn't turn on my camera for you guys because what value did I have anymore, right? It was Saturn. I didn't understand fully how to take responsibility for growing and maturing and to let the experience mature me instead of sink me, right? I didn't know how to do that. Right? Jupiter, I had to get into the philosophy in my mind, and I had to get into my faith. I had to get into an honest to God level of faith that the universe had me safe and protected and had my back. And the experience that I was going through was not only normal, right? It happens every single day, but that through my experience, I was going to gain wisdom and maturity. And the wisdom and maturity of it is that I was going to be able to help another woman. I was going to be able to help someone else when they thought that their boat was going to sink because their head, the delusion, is telling them one thing that may not be in reality, right? I didn't lose my value. What happened is I changed, and it was not a change I had prepared for. In fact, in my mind, in the depths of what really makes up how I was thinking, it was a change that I had dreaded. And there it was, the fear of all of it out up on the table. I sat face to face with another woman, looked her in her eyes, cried my ass off, to be clear, and I had to tell the truth. And then what came after that was a powerful connection with this thing I call my power, with the universe, to being with other people, to owning my space, down to my fashion, to my music, to how I stand, to my sex life with my husband, to what does it mean to be a wife today? What does it mean to be on the planet? So I'm sharing this with you because I really want you to understand, like, I'm a real human being over here. And during the retrograde time of the outer planets, we evaluate how we also fit into this world where we're out of control. We've got thinking that is out of control, and Jupiter, in its benevolence, is going to help us bring these very relevant concepts to the table, ask us about our faith, and say, I will give you what you're asking for. I will give you what's next. I will bring goodness to you. Are you ready? Do you have a table that I can set this on? Okay. So that was like long and drawn out, but I do want to talk very quickly about what we saw in June. So Jupiter went retrograde June 20th, 2 degrees of Pisces. And in the chart, Jupiter was actually in really nice aspect to the sun and the moon at that particular time. Okay. And this is great because when the luminaries are aspecting the benefic, this means we're going to have, there's fortune behind it, but it also means that my insides and my outsides are in alignment. There is going to be emotional well-being that comes to this. There's going to be emotional healing that is available with this. So as I come out of this Jupiter retrograde, emotionally and mentally, I've bridged some gaps, likely. Hopefully I've bridged some gaps so that I can get a new handle on that particular area of my life, right? And I can feel more comfortable. I can have an optimism, or I can see what beliefs and actions and attitudes I have that are actually blocking my peace, blocking my optimism. For me, I consider very highly also, where am I being not only a good parent, a present parent, but where am I also being the peace for my children as well? I mean, sometimes I am just like Saturn, but where am I also being the peace for people in my life while owning all of this? Because this is a lot over here. I really get that. Okay. Now, as Jupiter comes out of this beautiful retrograde and it comes direct, we're going to see that the sun and Jupiter are in a trine. So is Mars. Action. action. I can do stuff. Now I have a desire. I'm back in the game. I'm back in the game, right? That's what this energy is like. I'm back in the game. Okay, look, there's been a lot going on. There's been things going on in my community. There's been things going on in my world. I can't control any of that. I have to do right here. Control right here so that I have something to offer out to my home. Because remember, if I'm not practicing spirituality in my home, I am kidding that I am doing it anywhere else, right? And this doing this bubble gets me prepared for the things that are going on out there, right? So as these come together, it's like, okay, I'm ready to take actions. I'm ready to get into the game. And not only that, as then all of the outer retrograde planets, except for Neptune and Uranus, but these are the big guys here, as they come out of retrograde, remember they need October to get it together to be like, oh yeah, team, we changed these people, right? Then they're going to get going and we can really put those actions, that desire to be what I need to be next, right? Because Mars, Jupiter together is like, I want to win. That is exactly what I think about when I think of that particular aspect. Is it is wisdom, confidence, and action together, ready to roll. And we'll be able to do that as we get into November timeframe. So, I will say if October, November is a time frame for you where there are big important decisions, or there are if there are decisions that you need to make at this particular time, I think that you can pretty solidly do them. Now, of course, this will depend on your individual charts, but this is a time where you can usually take some pretty solid action on that, knowing you're a little bit more confident, knowing your situation and your circumstance differently. But this is where I have to say, guys, how this will manifest for you. Not everybody's going to go out here and have the best time ever. They're not like, yep, Stormie, I'm living my best life. What I would suggest is right now, as you're listening to this today, first of all, share this with somebody, because somebody needs to hear all this. Somebody out there is like, it's happening to me. Let's help them, right? In your current circumstance and situation, maybe if you even need to get pen to paper, sit down for a minute, look around at what's going on in your life and what is the influence you are having in your own life right now that is causing some outcome, right? And sometimes I don't even need to say anything. My body language can cause a problem, right? Or can block a blessing, right? And here's another thing I think about Jupiter coming direct, especially with that Mars. When it is not arrogant and it is humbly done, when you have been on a humble hustle, sometimes I think what you're going to see in the improvement of your relationships is that maybe you're running with the wrong crowd, right? Maybe you are running with the wrong crowd. You are here. You don't want that drama anymore. You're not interested in these things anymore. You're out here trying to be a whole blessing to the planet for the rest of the time that you have left. And maybe you are running with people who don't want that. This will be a Jupiterian thing over this next couple of weeks. Look at that. Do you have somebody in your life who you're giving to and they're not giving back? And not just that you think you're giving to them. What's the reality? How are you showing up in your relationships? And then evaluate that. But if you do have someone in your life and you keep giving them chance after chance after chance after chance, that's fine. If that is where you are at, nobody should be putting you down and judging you for that. Absolutely nobody, because you are learning your lessons. But if that doesn't work for you anymore, you too are met with a position of courage. Get out of there. What is stopping you from being successful with another group of people? I absolutely believe that if, as we're growing, you are not surrounded with the right kind of tribe who is keeping you accountable, not taking your shit, and helping you grow, what are you doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? These are the questions I have to ask myself every time we come into the outer retrograde energy. So I hope that what you are finding is a willingness to examine and a willingness to take some actions as we go forward, but also courage Courage. Jupiter is a courageous, self-confident energy, but sometimes I got to be courageous and take some actions that build that confidence for me so that I can go forward with wisdom from experience to make different decisions, have discernment instead of judgment in my life, right? Because when I judge people, I'm like, ooh, it's this low vibe. I promise you, when we get into the Stormy Grace judgment zone, it's low vibe and it's not good, and I don't grow and nobody gets better, right? But I do get to experience what it's like to be judgmental, and usually then somebody will do it back to me. But also when I practice discernment, I just move on, right? It is what I understand today, my job, to come out, whether it be online, whether it be at the kids' school, whether it's at the grocery store, and be good to the universe's kids, right? But to also understand I may not be where everybody's at. I can have compassion for humans where we are, no matter what that is, but it is my job to thrive. It is my job to thrive, right? And to find people who are thriving as well so that we can journey together. And wherever your thrive level or your survive level is at, find your people so that you can do that. But going out and being good to the universe's kids, right? Patience, love, tolerance, kindliness to others. That's a practice I've got to have in my space, but it does not mean it's my job to fix people. You guys, I hope that this is, oh, I didn't cover Jupiter retrograde in the chart, did I? Okay, I'm sorry. If you have Jupiter retrograde in your natal chart, typically this is a delay. This, I think, is the one of the outer placements that really comes with a delay. Like getting your goods is really delayed. Like you could have the best job, the best career. You could really be doing something good, maybe even something really expansive, and it doesn't like catch up to you until later. And you know what I mean? You've been doing the same thing, been being good to people, using your wisdom, all of this stuff. And then you turn like 35, 46, and it's like, boom, you have an arrival. And we watch people's charts all the time who have Jupiter retrograde, and they get right into a particular cycle, or they get a perfect activation depending on where it's at. And they have this arrival, and then they're big. And it happens, right? Like, so it can also be there. Now, the other thing about a Jupiter retrograde is you do have to be mindful if what's happening in here, right, your advancing wisdom and experience is translating to arrogance outside of yourself, or it's translating to things that are too big, eating too much, I'm being rude, I'm being selfish. It can absolutely be an addiction flipped around, and where you were in here consuming, being, me, the right arrangement will flip you out to where you're going to go be about other people, and then this spiritual growth happens. It's really very interesting when you have Jupiter retrograde. It is one of those placements, I think, for people where I'm like, I'm always so curious with people with Jupiter and retrograde. I'm like, what is your thing that you're doing too much of? Where are you being entirely extra, and that is actually available to be of benefit to someone else? Because I do teach that Jupiter in the natal chart is about, Jupiter loads you with these gifts, and it's gifts of something that you will have had some real life experience with. That's why you have the wisdom, but you can't keep it. You got to take it out into the world and give it away to other people to actualize the juice of that Jupiter retrograde. So, if you have that and you feel like, how come why do I feel like I'm not progressing forward? Or why do I feel like even spiritually, even in my mind, I can't get my mind to shut off so that I can just take advantage of these other concepts? Why is this the case? That can just be Jupiter retrograde in the chart. So, all right, my beautiful friends, we have gone through all of this. I will go back through in just a few minutes here and look for timestamps in case you're watching back so that you can see that and get right to it. But I hope that you have opportunities to evaluate, to think, to go over this and look at what this means in your life, and to look at your placements and see. Now, I will tell you one thing I can't do. If you put in the comment section down below, Stormie, I have this, what does it mean? I can't tell you without looking at your chart. That is completely unprofessional. I can't do it, so I won't. The best thing to do is going to be to book a reading or go over, be your own astrologer first, okay? I love you and I want to help, but I do not wish to do any harm, and just throwing out things is not, that is not ethical, like at all. So I love you guys a ton. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me. I'm sending you love wherever you are, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, everyone.